One thing that amazes me about terrorism in India today is that this is such a pluralistic society and has lived with diversity for so long that, in a sense, I guess I do expect a bit more proactive peace building. For example, in the city where I live in Delhi, there are ethnic ghettos everywhere that basically formed after partition. And the amount of ignorance that the different communities have about one another, the lack of cooperation, it's just a very divided city. And you see that in the manner that it's aggressive, the way that the people aren't really, to use a term, civil towards one another. You know, it's a very dog eat dog kind of city. And I think people who are from here are very used to it. And probably this sounds really silly and everyone has their explanations why, but no one really talks about what do you actually do so that things don't sort of erupt in war? And then our constant narrative of dealing with difference is how do we get them? You know, how about a more proactive way? And again, it isn't to say that India hasn't lived with diversity for millennia in a sense, um, but to say that this has to continue. We have to push this. This is what this means now, and the fact that someone like me, that my voice is even added to that, I think shows that the conversation also has to be slightly different. If you look at a lot of the comments left on my videos where I talk about difference, people often explain um, how hard it's been for India, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I can appreciate that. What I don't appreciate is this tone that a lot of people take that either A, as a foreigner, you have no right to say anything or be critical of India. And I think that I accept some of the responsibility for that because I also see that because of this is such a wounded city that people do need a bit more ego stroking. People do need to be told this is good and this is, and I also see this in the way that people speak here. You know, when I go to a formal setting and people are presenting and just to ask a question, someone will give 10 different compliments before saying something really critical. And I see that this is the way that people expect to be spoken to. And part of it, I think, has to do with the aggressiveness of this city. One should do a great deal of disarming. So I'm going to be a bit more attentive to that in the future. With that said, I'm not trying to say that India is the worst country in the world and look at all these terror attacks. What I'm saying is India has come a long way, much further than many other nations. We need to stop looking at it as them and us, these terror attacks, the way that, for example, the US did. You see how it worked out for us. So I don't know. Perhaps I'm expecting too much. Why don't you guys tell me? But when I look at communalism in India today, it's very disappointing. It's very disappointing to see how angry people become even just by breaching the subject. Even just by breaching the subject.